All right, so here's our second part of rounding, but this time we're going to kind of be looking at how we round decimals. So if you haven't watched the whole numbers video, I suggest you do that because we're going to jump ahead and not really talk about the techniques, but really just get straight to the style of find your place, look next door, if it is 4 or less, let it rest, let it rest. And if it's 5 or more, you add 1 more. And then really the rest go to zeros. And really what that means, you'll see rest go to zeros. Okay, so as you can see, it's no different. So we just find decimals, we think of the rules, we go ahead, we take it, we follow this, blah, blah, blah. So let's do that. Take a number 5 and 83/100ths, okay? And the first thing they may say is, I don't know, let's just say they say round to the 10th, right? So round to the 10ths. Okay, so step 1, find your place. Well, it tells me that, tenths, so I underline the digit in the tenth place. Look next door. Circle it. Draw the arrow, circle it. Remember, the circle will tell you a step that comes later. Now, the number next door that I just circled, if it's 4 or less, which means if it's 4, 3, 2, 1, or 0, then I let things rest. And if it's 5 or more, meaning 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then I would add 1 more. Well, we can see here that it is a 3, so that falls into the 4 or less, so let it rest. So the number I underlined, I'm just going to say +0. I'm letting it rest. I'm not doing anything to it. I'm leaving it all alone. Now, everything to the left of this underlined number over here, like we never talked about, so I'm actually going to just keep. So that's 5, and I'm going to do the math. Well, I said to let it rest, so 8 + 0 is still 8. And then I circled this because everything that I circle and then to the right turns into a 0. That's why I circle it, because that looks like a 0, right? That's why I say do that. And there we are. 5 and 83/100ths rounded to the nearest tenth is 5 and 80/100ths or 5 and 8/10ths, right? Those are equivalent. We've talked about that. Okay, so there you go. Practice, practice. 170 or 138. Wow, 132 and 78/100ths. Okay, now this is a decimal, but what if all of a sudden it says to me, oh, well, round to the nearest hundreds, right? Well, that's okay, because just because this is a decimal doesn't mean I still don't follow the rules. So it says round to the hundredths, so find that place. There's the hundredths place. Look next door, circle it, because remember, it's going to turn into a 0, and so is everything after it. 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, add 1 more. Well, this is a 4 or less number, because it's 3. That's right. So I let this rest. So let's see, 0 + 1 is still 1. I circled this because it turns into a 0. And so does everything else after that. And really, that decimal is so unnecessary. Like we don't need this. So it really just rounds to 100. 132 and 78/100ths rounded to the nearest 100 is 100. Okay. Now let's say, for example, though, that instruction was different. Let's say that instead of going to the hundreds, they said the hundredths. Let's take the same number and do that. Okay, so let's just say the rules changed. I try to erase without erasing everything. Okay, so now we're going to round to the hundredths. So same thing, find your place. Look next door. Well, look it over here. There's nothing there, so it is a 0. So 4 or less, let it rest. So this stays. So 132 and 78 hundredths. Rounded to the nearest hundredths is 132 and 78 hundredths. Same thing. Wow. Okay. Another thing you may see, though, that's very common is if I have something like, let's say, 37 and 56 hundredths, and the direction doesn't give you a place value. What it says is to round to the closest whole number. Now, when you see this, right, this is one of those things we just kind of like learn and know. If it tells me to round to the nearest whole number, well, if you think about it, our very first whole number place value, I got time, you know I like to explore this stuff. So like there's my place values, right? I have the hundredths, and that's a decimal, it's a part of something. I have the tenths, it's a decimal, it's part of something. I have the ones, and I have the tens. Well, our first whole number is the ones. That's the first time you have all of something. So remember, these are just parts. The fractional parts are the decimals. So when you see this direction that says, hey, take this decimal, and it will happen when you have a decimal. Trust me, it will happen with a decimal, and it will say, round this to the nearest whole number. Well, then when you find your place, you're just going to find the ones place, because that's the first whole number that we see. So find your place, look next door. This is 5 or more, so I'm going to add one more. The 3 never got talked about, so it stays. Do the math here. This is 37 plus 1, which is 8. This turns into a 0, and so does everything after it. So I have 38 and 0 hundredths, or really, just the best way to write that is 38. So that's how we could take decimals and round them to the nearest whole number. And that can even happen, like in this case, like what if we had this? And once again, it's like, hey, round to the nearest whole number. Okay, that's the ones place. Find my place, look next door. This is 5 or more, so I add one more. 1 plus 0 is 1. And then 0, 0, which really this is 1 and 0 hundredths, or just the number 1. So that would round. And that makes sense too. If you thought about this as money, that's 63 cents. Does that round to $1 or does it round to $0? So let's just throw a couple more out there just so we feel good about it. 500. All right, 582,690 and 763 tenths, hundredths, thousandths. We've never really talked about thousandths, but I just thought it'd be fun. So let's just put this in. That's just the next place value. So 582,690 and 763 thousandths is my number. All right, and the direction says round, says something, here we go. Round to the nearest 10,000. Okay, so I actually recommend you just pause this and try it, and then work it out, and then push play and see how you did. So I'm going to sit here and wait. Just kidding, you paused it. So now you just unpaused it, and I'm talking, and you've already done this work. So now let me do the work, and let's compare notes. Let's see how we did, okay? So round to the nearest 10,000 place. Step 1, find my place. Well, they told me that. It's in the directions. It says the 10,000s place, 10,000s, right? Notice there's no TH. So that's a whole number. So found my place. Look next door. 4 or less. So I'll let this rest. The 5 doesn't change. 8 plus 0 is still 8. I circled this because I'm going to turn this and everything after it into a 0. So that's a 0, comma, 1, 2, 3 zeros. 1, 2, 3. Decimal, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And again, I don't need these. It's like so unnecessary because there's no purpose to them. So there you have it. 582,690 and 763 thousandths rounded to the nearest 10,000 is going to get us 580,000. Cool. Okay. I don't know. One more? Let's just do one more. Why not? 2 and 83 hundredths round to the tenths. So pause, try it, come back and see. So now you just came back to see. So round to the tenths. All right, let's just follow our rules. Find my place, look next door. This is 4 or less, so I'll let my place value rest. We never talked about the 2, so it is still a 2. 0 plus 8 is 8. I circled this because it turns into a 0. And I can just say, ooh, can I? That was weird. Let me just say 2 and 8 tenths. So 2 and 83 hundredths, when rounded to the nearest tenth, is 2 and 8 tenths. So that's rounding. We use this later for so many other things. So like you may be like, okay, why were we doing this again? Right now, just learn how to round. Trust me, just learn how to round. And then later, when we're adding decimals, multiplying decimals, dividing decimals, as well as multiplying whole numbers in the hundreds and thousands and 10,000s, or dividing large numbers, we can use rounding as an estimation tool to help us out. And we will. So really get this skill down, keep asking those questions, and keep asking, or keep up all the great work and be present, right? I think for you, for what you're doing, I know that online learning is quite a challenge and we have our days, but thank you for staying positive and for working as hard as you